Welcome, everybody, to the City Rev Life podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, and with me is Pastor Robey. Man, how are you feeling today?
I'm good, man.
Yeah?
I'm good.
You know, recently I heard that you're a pretty big pet guy. Is that true?
Oh, well, that's one way to put it. I don't know that I'm a big pet guy. I did mention on Sunday that we have shifted our philosophy on pets. We had a no pet philosophy and opened the door to pets. We have some fish.
That's a big step.
It was a big step.
So that's telling me that soon enough, that philosophy will evolve to you guys having much bigger pets like a dog, cat.
I would say no. No, I don't think that's a fair assumption.
Why?
Well, for a couple reasons. One, I did at one point have a cat, and that was a bad experience. I've shared that before. My cat turned into an assassin and would attack us in the night, so we had to get rid of it. Also, a little bit more detail on the fish is that there are currently 3 living fish. One actually is a little questionable as of this morning. I'm just assuming it was sleeping on the bottom. Okay, just kind of laying there sleeping. But we have 3 currently since Christmas Day. 2. The original 3, 1 died, and then we got another one, and then that one died.
So
we got another one. So we've got 3.
I'm hearing that you've never had a dog, though.
Never had a dog.
What's up with that? I mean, they're a game changer. They bring so much joy. You don't think so?
2/5 of the 5 fish we've had in our house since Christmas have died. So I don't know. My confidence in maintaining the life of a dog is not very good. Do you have a dog?
I do have a dog.
You have a dog.
Me and Olani don't have a dog, but my family dog.
Your family has a dog.
Yeah, my parents.
Yeah, but whose dog? Like, it's usually like one person's dog. Like,
I'd say it's my sister's dog.
Your sister's dog.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But it's a family dog.
Family
but you guys
dog.
might get one day.
We might get one day,
But not
later
now.
down the line when we have our family. When they're older,
okay.
we'll have a dog.
Well, so I mean, just kind of look in the mirror, Jeremy. I mean, you don't have a dog.
Let's just talk about what we're going to talk about.
All right, we'll move on.
So we're going to reference something that we talked about this past Sunday. We were walking through the letter of Philemon, talking about forgiveness, but there was a detail in the letter that we want to give more detail on, and it's the ancient doulos. Looking throughout the scripture, that word slavery would come to mind. And so really we're going to be spending some time just talking through that, getting some context on that term, that role, and also just how we can better understand it from a biblical lens. So how do you want to start off this conversation, Robey?
I think that's great. First of all, let's just also say that we did talk about this in another podcast episode a few years back, slavery in the Bible, and so that's another resource to look at. We're going to look at it a little bit more from the Philemon standpoint, but this will be a little bit of a review from that podcast. But if you're listening or watching and are interested in you can also check out that episode. But let's just start with this. The concept of a doulos is the Greek word. It's translated in the New Testament sometimes as servant, sometimes as bondservant, sometimes as slave. And the complexity of finding a one-to-one Greek to English translation is challenging because the doulos, it was a pretty complex system, and it had a very wide range. And so it takes 3 different words to kind of get the concept depending on the context. And so, but it's important. This is one of those parts of the biblical context that's very important to know, because otherwise it's confusing to us in modern, and especially modern American Christians, because of just our past. I mean, we have just a horrific, egregious practice of slavery in our past, where people were kidnapped and were forced into slavery as if they were possessions. And it was very racially driven. And part of the complexity is because of the Christian background also of our nation is this is hard to even talk about, but like a lot of times it was defended back in by pro-slavery individuals. It was defended biblically, which you can't do if you're reading the Bible fairly, accurately, correctly, and which we'll talk about. But it makes this a very we have it's a troubling discussion in a lot of ways as we're reading through these texts. And so when Christians come across this idea of slavery in the Old and the New Testament, we have to understand the context, and that the context was more complicated, in many ways very different, and more broad. With that said, in no way are we defending that system of the doulos. I'll say that. I'll use the Greek word so we can get the fresh meaning into it. We're in no way saying it was okay, and it's certainly, we're not defending it, and neither does the Bible defend it. So let me just say it like that. But it's important to understand. So let's just maybe start with what was the ancient doulos. There's a wide range. Some of it was egregious, and that's important to know. There was it was a wide range from people there were doulos that were very wealthy. There were doulos it was total slave labor. They were considered less than human. So it goes a wide range. There were people that sought out becoming a doulos for economic advantage. So it's just very broad. It's not one narrow situation like in the history of the Western societies. In Rome, some estimate that it could have been as much as a third of ancient Rome's population was a doulos. Could have been 10 to 20% of the Roman Empire altogether, and it was not essentially racial. So there were people from all races. It really wasn't a racially motivated or bounded situation. There were people from all different races. People could be, again, on one hand, you had prisoners of war that were then considered slaves. There were some that they were being punished for some crime, and they were in some kind of labor camp, which would have been basically a death sentence. It was terrible. It was absolutely horrifying. There were some that were in governmental roles on the other extreme. Now, this would not be like an elected official, but these would be high-level administrative positions. Some owned property. And so because of the working class, like the extreme poverty of the working class, some people, that would be a scenario where some would actually get themselves into a doulos role so that they could actually advance economically. But most, we can know from ancient historians, most that were a doulos would have a reasonable expectation that they would find their freedom by a certain age, maybe by the age of 30 or after a certain number of years. They would have then put themselves in an economic position where they would then have advanced and gotten themselves out of that role. So again, this is just defining as best we can historically what was. It's not defending it. It's not saying it's okay, but it's very important to know that it's broader. Frankly, a piece of it includes what slavery looked like in Western society in generations past, but it was also very much broader than that. So that's just a basic overview of when you're reading in the New Testament about a slave, about a doulos. It is a much broader It's a much broader system than what we typically think of.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's just a wide range of meanings when it comes to the ancient doulos. Now, how does the Bible specifically speak into that?
Right. So, well, for starters, it's sometimes I hear like, well, it seems like the Bible condones slavery, and so which is interesting for Philemon because we've been talking about Philemon. There were many. I don't know if it was many. Maybe that might be an overstatement, but there were pro-slavery voices that used Philemon as a justification for slavery because they would say, well, look, Paul is sending this slave back to his owner. He's sending Onesimus back to Philemon. And especially in our history, I think about some of the heroes of our society. I think of Frederick Douglass. I think of Harriet Tubman. I think of those involved in the Underground Railroad and some things like that. I mean, these are people we look at their incredible courage and how they were a part of rescuing many people. And so when we hear the concept of Paul sending Onesimus back, if we don't understand the full breadth of the doulos, then it's very dissonant. But we have to not read our history back into the ancient history and have to understand there's a much broader context there. And let's just go with, what does the Bible directly say? Well, one of the clearest ones is in Exodus 21. Here's what it says. It says, whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him shall be put to death. So the type of system that was happening in Western society a few hundred years ago, like according to the Bible, that could never be justified by the Bible because that is considered a capital crime. Why? Because the Bible opens up that God is making men and women in his image. Every human being, every man, every woman is made in the image of God. Every human being is an image bearer, an image bearer of God. And so no one should ever be considered less than another. No one could ever be considered the possession of another. We all we ultimately are the creation of God, made in his image. And so a lot of times what we see in the Bible when we see slaves, for one, we have to pause and understand we're probably reading our history into that ancient context, and we need to have the humility to seek out what is the context. But at the same time, oftentimes the Bible is describing something, not prescribing something. So it's...
Can you make the difference between the two?
Yes. So another great example of this is polygamy. So many characters in the Bible had multiple wives. The Bible is not recommending that. It's not prescribing that. But the Bible's really raw and honest at points, and it is describing what happened, not endorsing what happened. And so a lot of times what we see in the Bible is it's being honest. It's not, and this is something I think to praise the Bible for. It never, you never, there's only one perfect person in the Bible. It's Jesus. All these other people in the Bible, we want to make them heroes. That the Bible's very honest about their strengths and their weaknesses. And most of the characters have deep flaws in the Bible. And so a lot of time it's describing things that they did. It's not recommending them. And usually what we see is we read the story in the context. We're reading it sensitively, and we're not just using the Bible to proof text what we want. We'll see when we're actually reading what's happening, we'll see that what's describing turned out very badly for them. And we can kind of read that from the context. So let's bring Philemon back into view. There were others that were biblically arguing against slavery from so many places in the Bible, not just the Exodus passage that I read, but so many other things like the being made in the image of God. How about do unto others as you would have done unto you? How about Paul saying that in Christ we're all one, whether slave or free, male or female, whatever race we are? He was like eliminating those barriers in our minds. We're one. Christ redeems our value with one another. It should be refining and redeeming, taking us back to how God made us. But also those who were biblically arguing against slavery, they also pointed out in Philemon, hey, listen, read the full story. Paul is urging Philemon to change his heart towards this doulos, and he's saying, receive him as a brother. And so this is what this is doing, is it's undermining from within the whole framework of slavery. And it's more than just, and Paul is doing more than just changing the nature of their relationship together. He's taking that even farther, and he's saying your heart towards him needs to change. You need to let the gospel not just change the framework of your household, the positioning in your household, your perspective of this brother. It's got to change in your heart. That's why Paul says, I'm not commanding you to do what's required. I'm appealing to you for love's sake to receive him as a brother. Receive him as you receive me. So Paul is going farther. He's going all the way to Philemon's heart. He's not just, and what we know is because we have the book of Philemon, we talked about this a little bit on Sunday, it was effective. It was risky, but it was effective because if Philemon didn't follow that, he would have torn up the letter and threw it out. But the fact that it was retained and circulated in churches all over, we know, we can pretty much see the evidence is that Philemon followed it. So Paul could have just protected Onesimus. The fact that he sent Onesimus back with the letter and appealing not just for a systemic change, but a heart change, man, I think that's part of the astonishing, shocking power of the letter. In other words, the Bible, I think you could argue it like this. The Bible sets the stage for later societies to not only have a view that's not a totalitarian government where it's just there's a monarch or an emperor that the whole population serves. The Bible sets the stage for societies built on mutual respect for the dignity of every citizen. So the Bible's setting the stage for that, and setting the stage for societies to be built on some of those ideas that every human is made in the image of God. It's not only setting the stage for societies like that, but it's then setting the stage for those societies to rise up and realize that the systems need to match that. And it's setting the stage for the abolition of egregious practices like thinking you can own another human. So I think that they didn't have the same reference point in that first generation that we do, because the system was different, was broader. We're not defending it. We're not saying it was okay, but we're just acknowledging that it was broader. And let's not pretend like they had a free system where they could rise up and affect change in their government. They had monarchs that were totalitarian, and if they didn't like something or you rioted, they'd just crucify all of you. And so we're in a very different system, and we have to appreciate how, but look for how is the Bible doing two things: undermining the system by changing hearts within it, and setting the stage for future societies to rewrite the whole system. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I was that I picked up on what you said earlier is, as far as, I mean, this term in mind, ancient doulos, like reading into it, not with your own presupposition,
Right.
but reading into it with just this humble attitude of seeking to understand how it relates in the immediate text.
Absolutely. And I think that's the challenge of learning to study and read the Bible. And I think it's always a challenge, but we start with, what is this meaning in the original audience as best we can, and trying to understand what it's speaking into, and trying to learn the culture and learn. And there's resources. One of the resources we love is the ESV Study Bible, English Standard Version Study Bible, and it has these notes that helps us understand when there's contextual clues that maybe it's going to be a little bit different for us as a modern reader. But just make no mistake, the Bible, it upholds the dignity of every human being over and over, and it implores us to treat one another with love and kindness and self-sacrifice. I mean, even Jesus, he said, the greatest among us is the servant and doulos of the other. And so, like, Jesus is actually commanding all of us to place ourselves in a position to serve one another. I mean, these things these were the things that are turned the church community, the church koinonia, upside down, and it's what just radically transformed the world. And these are the things that we're still working out in society and in church and in our own relationships, is how do we serve one another and see the dignity in everyone, and see how everyone, even though if they're very, very different from us, everyone is made in the image of God and should be, and we should seek out to serve those around us.
What would you, to kind of bring this to a close, what are some kind of last points that you would give to the viewers in light of what we just talked about?
Absolutely. The challenge of Philemon, the book of Philemon, and the challenge to the person of Philemon was to see this individual Onesimus as a brother and receive him as a brother into his life. And that can be applied in a lot of ways. We've been applying it on the issue of forgiveness. So I think Pastor Josh said it. I think you mentioned it, referenced it in your sermon as well, Jeremy, is that, bitterness, it has a way of really shifting our perspective of someone. And it can, when we're angry at someone or hurt by someone, we can make them a monster. In our mind, as bitterness grows, they become a monster. They become subhuman. And that's one thing that bitterness does, is it just makes everything that person do. We judge it. We look down on it. We despise it. They become a monster. Yeah. Bitterness dehumanizes the person who wounded us. And that's one way of dehumanizing someone, is bitterness. And so we've got to push against that and understand that every person is made in the image of God, even if they've hurt us. And we don't want to have that perspective of someone. And we want to reclaim that, releasing that bitterness through the process of forgiveness and seeing them as a brother or sister. However, it is also an important moment to think about, is there anyone else that I don't see as an equal brother or sister, or someone who's equally made in the image of God? And one of the things that it's always important to weed out of our hearts and our minds is any kind of bias, gender bias, economic bias, racial bias, a national bias. I mean, anytime we see someone as less than we are for any reason, there should be a flag going off. When we see someone, we should catch that in our own hearts and work on that before the Lord, because we want to see other people the way Jesus sees other people, the way the Father sees other people. And we don't want to dehumanize anyone. We don't want to look down on anyone. We want to receive people as brothers or sisters, all made, and we want to defend the dignity of every person made in the image of God.
So, what I'm hearing you say is how the Bible, how it upholds the dignity of all human life, and how it calls us to do the same, to follow in the Lord's footsteps, and treating people and looking at people the way the Lord treats us, the way the Lord sees us.
Absolutely, yeah. And so if there's anyone in our lives, that is different than us and we look down on them, maybe they have different beliefs, they have different religious beliefs, different political beliefs, different economic beliefs. If there's someone has different education than you, or different economy than you, or different, whatever it may be, let the Holy Spirit just continue to till the soil of our hearts and surfacing to our minds people that we may look down on and not see as a brother or sister. We don't want to have that perspective. We want to have the perspective of Christ, that we have a posture of blessing towards anyone because they're made in the image of God.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. Well, thank you guys for joining us on the City Rev Life podcast. I hope this podcast encouraged you. We'll see you back on the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening to the City Rev Life podcast. Feel free to subscribe and leave a rate and review. We love it when you share it with your friends on social media, so don't forget to tag us at cityrev.church. If you're interested in more resources, download our City Rev Church app and follow us on social media. Have a great day.